A series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket in an eggshell. Get it? Because it's supposed to be in a nutshell, but I used eggs, so it's in an eggshell. Get it? So, there are three Baudelaire children. There's Violet, the inventor, Klaus, the researcher, and Sunny, the biter. Unfortunately, their parents died in a terrible fire that consumed their entire home. A friendly banker named Mr. Poe takes them to live with someone named Count Olaf, who is a mean man who wants to steal their fortune that their parents left behind for the Baudelaires. Anyway, but the thing is, he can't get the fortune until Violet comes of age, and then the Baudelaires manage to escape from Count Olaf, and then he's not given up yet, though, so Mr. Poe places them under the care of Uncle Monty, who gets killed, and then Aunt Josephine, who gets killed, and then, for complicated reasons, they end up at a lumber mill, and then he takes them to a boarding school with a terrible principal called Vice Principal Nero. Well, actually, he's a vice principal then. Anyway, so the Baudelaires meet other kids that are called Duncan and Isadora Quagmire. They become best friends, but unfortunately, Count Olaf comes along and kidnaps them because it turns out that they have an enormous fortune too. Anyway, so Mr. Poe is back, and he takes them to live with rich people called Jerome and Esme Squalor, and then the thing is, Esme was actually working for Count Olaf the whole time, and then Duncan and Isadora are found again, but then they're kidnapped again. Mr. Poe sure has a reputation for taking these kids to bad places, puts them under the care of a village, and then a handyman named Hector actually takes care of them in the village. And then Count Olaf shows up disguised as a detective, and the detective guy makes everyone think that a guy named Jacques is Count Olaf, and then he murders Jacques and blames the Baudelaires for this, and then Duncan and Isadora are found again, and then they're taken by Hector to live in a self-sustaining hot air mobile home, hot air balloon thing, and the Baudelaires try to get up there too, but it's too late, it's already taking off. Anyway, so now everyone thinks the Baudelaires are murderers of Count Olaf, who isn't even really murdered, and so then they manage to escape. But Count Olaf and Esme aren't giving up yet. Not just yet. Anyway, so they spend some time at a hospital, they spend some time at a carnival, and then some time at the mountains where they meet Quigley Quagmire, who is actually the lost triplet brother of Duncan and Isadora. But then Quigley gets lost in a river, and the Baudelaires get lost in a river too. They end up in a submarine called the Queequeg with a guy named Captain Widdershins and his stepdaughter, Fiona. Captain Widdershins assigns them a mission to go into a cave to find something called the Sugar Bowl. And they go in there, but they don't find the Sugar Bowl. So they come back, but then the submarine is deserted. No one's in there. And then Count Olaf finds them, and Fiona joins his troop for complicated reasons. And then they manage to escape, and they're taken by a woman named Kit Snicket to a hotel called the Hotel Denouement. They are given disguises as concierges, which are hotel employees, and then they're also told to find something called the Sugar Bowl, which you've heard about earlier, and also they're told that a man named Frank will try to help them, but his twin brother Ernest is a bad guy. And then, when they're at the Hotel Denouement doing their disguise thing, they meet a bunch of people who they know from their past, including Count Olaf. And then they also meet this guy named Dewey Denouement, who is sort of like a manager of the hotel and also a librarian, but that's a complicated thing that we won't go into. So it turns out he's the triplet brother of Ernest and Frank, so they're not twins, they're actually triplets. But then Dewey dies for complicated reasons involving Count Olaf. And then the Baudelaires destroy the hotel in a fire, and then they escape with Count Olaf for complicated reasons in a boat, and they get shipwrecked on an island. A man named Ishmael and his fellow islanders take them in, except for Count Olaf, because he's mean. Ishmael does not want to force them, but he would like it if the Baudelaires followed their customs, and one of their customs was that everyone had to wear a white robe and no accessories, like a hair bow. So Violet hides her little hair bow thing in her pocket, and Klaus has been carrying around a notebook he calls a commonplace book, so he has to hide that too. And Sonia has been carrying a whisk that a girl named Friday gave her, but now she has to hide that as well. Ishmael finds out, and he's mad. He abandons the Baudelaires on the coastal shelf with Count Olaf, who is still mean, And Kit Snicket also washed up on shore, but she's unconscious. Anyway, back at the island, the people have split into two, like a schism. There's been the people who don't support Ishmael and don't like his customs, and there's people who support Ishmael and like his customs. There's a big fight, and then Count Olaf shows up with a deadly fungus that he got for complicated reasons, and everyone's poisoned, including Count Olaf, the Baudelaires, and Kit Snicket, who's still unconscious. The islanders escape on a boat, which leaves these guys, and the Baudelaires find a cure, which is horseradish, and then they find a bunch of apples made out of horseradish, and then they eat an apple, but then Kit Snicket gives birth to a child, who they named Beatrice after the Baudelaires' mother. And then Kit Snicket dies of labor, and then Count Olaf dies too, and then the Baudelaires swear to raise Kit Snicket's child as their own. 1 year later, they leave the island on a boat. The end.